Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name and Hearthstone is the game, and this is part 14 of my Journey to Unguro review, and this is a very special one. A ton of cards were just dumped in a card reveal stream earlier today, and some like 70 plus cards were seen. This time around, I'm not going to get to all of them, but I am going to go through all of the new legendaries that were shown, and a couple legendaries that were shown yesterday that I'm catching up on. But in total, I think I have 7 new legendary cards, including some of the new legendary quests. So there's a lot to talk about, some crazy cards in this video. Let's go ahead and dive right in, starting off with the new Mage quest called Open the Waygate. This quest requires you to cast 6 spells that didn't start in your deck. So in other words, spells that you generate from something on the board. For instance, Babbling Book or Kabbalist's Tome are 2 very common ways to create cards right now. But there's actually going to be some additional card generation cards added to the Mage set. Those are going to be in future reviews. They were revealed today. There's a couple. I don't want to get into the specific details. But essentially, there's probably 5, 6, 7 cards right now that can generate spells for you. Some of which are already playable, and it looks to me like the new ones are pretty competitively viable as well. So, although that originally sounded like a pretty difficult quest to fulfill, at this point, and after seeing it happen on the stream, I don't really think that's going to be hard. So I think that's going to be a pretty reasonable quest to complete, in fact. And then your reward is Time Warp. And you'll see here on the screen, Time Warp is a 5 mana spell that allows you to take an extra turn. That's right. It's like a super innervate with even more benefits. So how that works is you have 10 mana, let's say, and you're on your turn. You can play 5 mana worth of stuff onto the board. You have 5 mana remaining, so you cast Time Warp, and then your end turn button transforms and says extra turn. So then you hit the end turn button, but it doesn't end the turn and pass it back to your opponent. Instead, it just gives you a totally new turn. And that operates exactly like a new turn. So, for instance, minions that you played previously that were sleeping now get to attack. So it's almost like they have charge in essence, because it's all happening within one moment before your opponent can actually react. So it's like essentially it's like a 15 mana super turn, right? Because you got to spend 5 mana to get there. Theoretically, there's obviously some cost reduction options that can make Time Warp cheaper, but so it's like a 15 mana super turn. All minions that you play the first half essentially have charge, and then you get 10 extra mana to work with as well. So one crazy goofy combo that was already shown off is essentially you get some really cheap Molten Giants and Arcane Giants. You know, you like Ice Block into Molten Giants and have some Arcane Giants from casting so many darn spells. And then you play all 4 Giants. You hit your extra turn after you Time Warp. Those 4 Giants get to attack now immediately because you've started a new turn, and you do 32 damage to your opponent's face. So that's like the perfect scenario, right? But that's not always going to happen. That requires a very specific kind of deck. But even outside of that, like, just having that second turn is crazy. Having 10 extra mana to work with, giving some minions initiative like that allows them to attack, lose that summoning sickness is just, it's really good. It's very, very powerful. Obviously, it's game-changing. That said, I don't know that it's as good as all the other quests that we've seen, because it's a one-time effect. It's the kind of thing that sort of necessitates you win the game on that turn, or at least put yourself in a really strong position to win the game that turn. Otherwise, like, there's just too many good quests out there that are going to override that effect and just win out in the long run anyway, right? So, I don't know. I just don't think Time Warp is going to be that strong. It's very cool. It's good. I'm sure we'll see some combo decks. There's all kinds of burst damage stuff that Mage can do anyway when they have mana. So Freeze Mage, for instance, maybe makes a comeback with Molten Giants and burst damage in hand with Time Warp. I don't know. That sounds pretty cool, but who knows? It's definitely good enough to be played. It's just maybe not good enough to beat all the other crazy things that are happening in Unguro, because frankly, there's a lot of powerful effects in Unguro, and it seems like every card before Unguro is just going to be tossed in the trash practically, because all these Unguro cards are just nuts. And I think it's just going to be a race to the top to see what's the most powerful, even though all this stuff would probably be one of the best decks in a previous set. You know, if we took any of these quests back to the last set, they'd all be dominant, but in their own environment, who knows? it's going to be tough to see. So let's move on to the next card. This is the new Warrior quest. And sorry the artwork here sucks, by the way. This was pulled from the stream and stuff, so the artwork's obviously really blurry and not final. But anyway, this is Fire Plume's Heart. Of course, 1 mana quest. You got to play 7 taunt minions. A lot of people were predicting this is what it would be for Warrior because Blizzard loves taunt Warrior, apparently. And your reward is Sulfuras, which is the weapon of Ragnaros, for those of you who aren't super up on the Warcraft lore. And Sulfuras in Hearthstone is a 3 mana weapon. It's a 4/2, and it has a really nifty battle cry. Your hero power becomes deal 8 damage to a random enemy. So this is an effect we've seen before when your hero actually transforms into Ragnaros from Majordomo Executus. But this time around, you don't have to go down to 8 health, of course. You can keep your hero and keep all your armor that you've stocked up. So there's no downside there, but you still get the upside of the hero power. That's pretty good. Like, obviously, just being able to do 8 damage for 2 mana every single turn is going to wear on your opponents a lot. It's way better against decks that don't run a lot of small minions, though, because, you know, often it would hit a 1/1 or something. So it's going to take the right kind of matchup and the right kind of decks for that to really be successful. But even against those small kinds of decks, right, like, it's a super ping effect. Even if it hits a 1/1, it's essentially a mage hero power, which isn't bad at all. And then occasionally it's going to hit the 8 health minion too, and it's going to be a huge tempo swing and win. But don't undervalue, too, the fact that you get a nice little 4/2 weapon. Like, that's a nice bonus as well. I'm surprised it's only a 4/2. I would think it'd be like a 4/4 or something, just because it's a quest reward, and these quests are really quite powerful in general. But anyway, a 4/2 weapon for 3 is instant tempo. If you play this early enough, like, you're not going to be sacrificing your entire turn like you might with some of the other quests, which take a little longer to build up an advantage from. And then you get the cool hero power. Again, though, much like Time Warp, as strong as this is, this would be super dominant in a lot of previous metas. I just don't know that it's going to be able to keep up with all the Unguro cards. So I like this. It's good. We'll just have to see what kind of decks support it. I don't know if Taunt Warrior can be good enough, for instance, for this to work. Perhaps it can. There's a lot of new taunts that look pretty good. So I think that's not going to be the issue. I just don't know that Sulfuras is eventually going to pack enough of a punch or apply enough pressure to your opponents to be successful. But ultimately a strong effect. It's just, will it be good enough? That's kind of my new question for Unguro, because everything seems so darn good. So on that theme, let's move on to the next quest. This is the Druid quest, Jungle Giants. This one, you have to summon 5 minions with 5 or more attack. And when you do that, you get Barnabas. And that's Barnabas the Stomper over there, you'll see on the right side of the screen. And his battle cry is, reduce the cost of minions in your deck to 0. That's right. All minions in your deck cost 0 mana. Just process that for a moment. It's absolutely insane. Not to mention that you're playing a 5 mana 8/8, which is already a good play, so you don't feel particularly bad about that one. And then you have one of the craziest effects in history, I think. I feel like this wasn't given enough love on the reveal stream. Like, Aviana Kun is a combo that is already driving really powerful meta decks for Druid. Like, Jade Druid is all over the ladder, but when you get to the high legend stuff, Jade falls off and Aviana Kun becomes the super competitive style of play, that combo style, or Aviana Kun Malagos specifically. Barnabas the Stomper is like a mega Aviana Kun Malagos. Instead of having to have all those specific cards in hand, you can just have Malagos. And then you can Malagos, swipe, Moonfire, anything you want, right? Like, you can string together an entire turn because Malagos costs 0 mana. That's crazy. Like, it really scares me how good that is. Now, obviously, there's a couple things that's going to necessitate you're going to have card draw in that kind of deck for it to work. Otherwise, you're just going to be wasting a ton of mana, right? Because you'd be playing an 8 mana minion anyway. Whether it costs 0 or not would be irrelevant if you ran out of cards. If you didn't have more stuff to play, you'd just be floating 8 mana every turn, and that would be a waste. So, like, even in the reveal stream, we saw Cold Light Oracle being run in this quest deck, because that's a 0 mana draw 2 now that also develops a 2/2 body. So Druid has that with Nourish, and, you know, obviously Cold Light Oracle can be teched in. Wraths, Gadget Zan Auctioneer could set that up really efficiently as well. There's all kinds of ways to draw cards. That's not a problem for Druid. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. So, I mean, imagine a turn with Gadgets and Auctioneer. Jade Idol, Jade Idol, Jade Idol, Jade Idol. And then you also, any minions you happen to draw throughout there, you could just load up the board for free. Once Barnabas goes off, it's going to be just ridiculous how quickly Druid can assemble a board as long as they have any card draw in hand. So we might just see a deck that's maybe half 5-attack minions, half card draw, just go crazy. I mean, obviously you got to have some threats too. I don't know what the deck's going to look like. That might actually be the downfall of this list, is trying to fit enough 5-attack minions in to satisfy the quest, trying to fit actual threats in that allow you to develop the board once you've satisfied the quest, and then also fitting in enough card draw. So it might actually work with Jade, though, although there's not that many actual Jade minions. Oh no, it says summon 5 minions. You don't even have to play them. Oh my god, it's perfect for Jade. You don't even have to play the minions. So summoning 5/5 Jades is going to activate Jungle Giants. And then you're going to get like 0 mana Ayas and stuff. Oh my goodness. I mean, Jade is as a mechanic for Druid already, though. It doesn't really matter if their cost reduced because you're often summoning with like Jade Idols and stuff. But still, this just works in so many different ways. And by the way, a lot of people might be wondering about how you fulfill this quest when Druid has a lot of 4-attack stuff and things that are smaller. But there's a lot of new 5-attack minions being added that worked for Druid specifically. Druid's class minions as well, so I'll address those in future reviews. But Druid's going to have the tools it needs to complete this quest. I don't think that's going to be the issue. It's just finding the right deck and the right build around for it that's going to be challenging. But if we find a deck that works and has the right balance of all that stuff, this is going to be a crazy effect too. I think it's got the potential to be broken. So we'll have to wait and see how Barnabas, how he goes. Let's move on to some of the neutral, or I guess one neutral legendary for now. This was a new one that was revealed. The Vorax, a new 4-mana 3/3. And it's got a really cool effect. After you cast a spell on this minion, summon a 1/1 plant and cast another copy of that spell on the new minion that you've summoned. So for instance, you're playing Paladin. On turn 5, you play down the Vorax. You put Divine Strength on the Vorax. You get a 4/5/4. That's good stats. But you also get a 2/3 minion out beside it, right? And as you have more mana, you can do crazier things, like Blessing of Kings for an 8-mana combo would give you a 7/7 for 4 mana. Haha. But you'd also get a 5/5 outside along it, right? And any kind of buffing class is going to be able to do some pretty nutty stuff with this. Now, some classes probably won't be able to make this work very well just because they don't really have that many in-hand buffs or spells to cast on a minion like this. And it is specifically a spell, right? It's not just any sort of effect. So this is probably a dead card to some classes, but a really strong one to other classes. I mean, even in Priest, right, with like Power Word Shield, that's going to be a cool little play. You're going to get a 3/5 for 4, which is okay, but you're going to draw 2 cards because you're also going to get a 1/3, and you're going to cast that effect and get to summon the card. Like it's not just a stat buff; it's whatever the effect of that card does. So you'll get 2 card draw, which would be pretty cool for 5 mana. So as you can see, there's a lot of potential here. This could be a defining card for a buff style of deck. Paladin, obviously, the one that comes to mind most readily. But a good little card that's going to be viable in specific kinds of decks and totally left out for other classes. But I like the Vorax quite a bit. So let's move on to the new Priest legendary that was shown off. This is Lyra the Sunshard, a new elemental minion at 5 mana, 3/5 in stats. And whenever you cast a spell, you add a random priest spell to your hand. So that's pretty neat too, right? That's pretty nifty. That is Lock and Load, essentially the hunter spell of old, but attached to a minion. And in fact, it's even better than Lock and Load, because Lock and Load activated off spells, but it could give you any hunter card. So it could give you all minions back. It wasn't possible to infinitely chain Lock and Load. But theoretically, Lyra the Sunshard, you really could infinitely chain it. You could get Power Word Shield into Power Word Shield into Power Word Shield into Power Word Shield. As long as you had mana to work with, this could go on forever and ever, because you're always going to get a new spell to activate the effect. And in fact, to bounce off of that, I'll show you this card in a future review, but Priest also got a new card that's basically Sorcerer's Apprentice for Priest. It's instead of a 3/2, it's a 2/3, but it has the exact same effect, I think, where you reduce the cost of spells by 1. So for instance, in that example with Power Word Shield, you literally could go forever if you had that other card on board, because it would be 0 mana Power Word Shields. As long as you kept getting Power Word Shields to feed the system, you could go. That would never happen, but you could go forever. But even if that's not the case, right? You get Power Word Shields, you get 3 extra Shadow Word Deaths, you get a few Shadow Word Pains, you get Entomb, which wouldn't happen in standard format, but you get the idea. It's the potential's bonkers. It's just going to add so much extra value to your hand. It's going to allow you to go toe-to-toe with all kinds of stuff just because you're going to get so many spells. Now, that said, there are a lot of weak priest spells, I think. A lot of very situational spells, a lot of conditional spells that won't always be good, and they're just going to kind of fill your hand. I think that's the one downside for this card. It's just the risk of getting junk is always there. But if you build your deck out in a way that supports your utilization of junk, for instance, maybe you add some Wild Pyromancers to make Circle of Healing good, or just to bounce off spells and give your spells some additional synergies, right? There's ways to build decks around that kind of thing. So maybe that's the saving grace for this card. But clearly, this kind of effect is powerful, and it's so there's so much raw potential in it that this seems like the kind of card that could definitely be played as long as you find a deck that supports it. Now, I don't think it's going to be like a class-defining card unless the perfect deck arises for it. I don't think this is something you throw into every priest necessarily. I think it's going to be like Confessor Paletress in that way, where it's good sometimes in the right deck, but otherwise not just a one-of in every priest deck ever. But ultimately, I think still a strong card that's got some viability. So for my last 2 cards, these are 2 cards that were actually revealed before the card dump reveal stream, but I wanted to go ahead and get to them since they were legendaries, and this is an all legendary review, which is awesome. The first of which is the new Druid legendary minion with the most boring artwork ever. This just looks exactly like a dinosaur. I described this previously on a Twitch stream, actually, so check that out, by the way. But it just looks like something you'd see in like a encyclopedia art. It doesn't look like Hearthstone card art to me. It looks too realistic and too flat. But that aside, Tyrantis, a new 10-mana minion that's a 12/12 beast, can't be targeted by spells or by hero powers, so that combo effect that we've seen a lot before. But Tyrantis, to me, is just going to be a card that's way too slow. There's just not a lot of way to force your opponent's hand through this card. You play it for 10 mana, they ignore it, they play small taunts to get in the way of it. It just kind of sits there and doesn't necessarily get to do anything. Now, obviously, there's cool stuff you can do, like Menagerie Warden to summon 2 12/12s, but that's a very, very slow play because you have to wait for the first 12/12 to sit on the board for a turn. Then you play your Menagerie Warden, and you got to wait for the second 12/12 to sit on the board and play for a turn. And in the meantime, you're giving your opponent so much time to react, to find lethal, to build a big board of their own. Like, it's just probably going to be too slow. Now, that said, Druid does have some ramp, obviously, and does have Innervate as well to get this card out, like on turn 6, maybe even turn 5 if you got the double Innervate coin or whatever, or you ramped up a little faster. So this gets better the earlier out in the game it is actually going to hit the board. But even then, it's one of those cards where it's like you kind of have to just go face with it and try to kill your opponent before they find the resources to deal with it. It's also susceptible to Battlecry effects, like Big Game Hunter, for instance, which might be a card that actually makes a return with all the big minions that are showing up these days. But also like the new Rogue Assassinate minion that can target big stuff like this. It's a Battlecry, it's not a spell, so there are some weaknesses there, but it's still probably a card that's going to live when you play it. I just don't think it's going to change the game significantly enough when you play it, which is the real downside here. It is a beast, so there's always the beast synergy stuff too. But in the end, I don't really think this is going to be a viable card. But, well, maybe I take that back, right? I kind of prepared that review before I saw this card. But with Jungle Giants, why not? Tyrantus gets a lot better, right? If you run him in a Jungle Giants quest, this could be one of those big bombs that you play for 0 mana, and you just load up the board with stuff that your opponent can't deal with and can't answer, and this just enables you to get the kill and get the win, right? So, outside of the quest environment, Tyrantus is trash. In a quest deck, though, maybe he actually works rather well. We'd have to wait and see exactly how those pieces all fit together, but that's really the only saving grace for Tyrantis, so it'll be interesting to see how that one shakes out. So let's move on to the final card in this review. It's another neutral legendary minion, 4 mana Spiritsinger Umbra. It's a 3/4 for 4, so a little understated, unfortunately, but has a nice little battle cry. After you summon a minion, trigger its Death Rattle effect. So this one's interesting. It's different than the other sort of Death Rattle triggering effects we've seen with cards like Princess Huhuran and the new Hunter card whose name escapes me, but both of which activate Death Rattle effects that are already on the board. You play that one and it activates it for you. This one's the other direction, right? This one you play it first, and then it activates the minion. Now, I can't really decide if that's an advantage or a disadvantage. Both of those cards allow you to combo out 2 things in a single turn, theoretically, right? You can play a minion and then play the follow-up minion, activate the Death Rattle, and you get the instant Death Rattle in a single turn. Spiritsinger Umbra allows you to do that too, just in the other direction. You play Umbra first, and then you play your Death Rattles. And the other upside, of course, is that if you have like 3 small Death Rattles, you can play Umbra first and play all 3 small ones and activate all of their Death Rattles on the same turn. You can't do that with Huhuran and her little cousin. That's just for 1 minion at a time. So that's definitely one upside for Umbra. I think the other is that if you preload this card and get it out on a turn, and you're able to like keep it alive safely for a little while, which is possible but seems a bit unlikely. It's going to be a pretty big target to hit. Then you can go like crazy on the following turn. You might have 10 mana left to play a ton of Death Rattles and just get sick Death Rattle effects going off constantly. I think another thing with this card and the other new Death Rattle activation minion that were revealed is probably why Sylvanas was taken out of the game, because it'd just be too good to play a Sylvanas with this guy, steal a minion instantly, and then still have a Sylvanas to steal another minion. That'd just be too strong. So I'm sure that Spiritsinger Umbra killed Sylvanas for standard format, but that's going to be a sick combo in Wild, so pay attention to that. So I guess this is better than the other way around if you think about it. There's definitely more advantages and probably no real distinctive disadvantage to Spiritsinger Umbra. So a neat take on that same kind of effect and a strong card. It's going to work in Death Rattle decks. It's going to be good. Some Death Rattles are really strong, particularly new stuff. Like there was a new Nerubian Egg kind of card revealed, a variant thereof. I think it was just called the Dinosaur Egg or something of the sort. Not Dinosaur Egg. Devilsaur Egg, I think is the name. So this would be really good with a card like that, right, where the Death Rattle is particularly the good part of the card, right? It's not the secondary effect, where the Death Rattle is the real point of the card. This makes those kinds of cards shine really well. So that would be a 3-mana card that summons you a 5/5 alongside Spiritsinger Umbra, and that's a pretty sick little turn 7 play, right? So this will be a card that definitely sees some play and will have a big impact on the game as long as Death Rattle decks work, and they will. Death Rattle is going to be good, so I like Spiritsinger Umbra. So there you have it. Those are the 7 new legendary cards that have been revealed in the last 2 days, the final legendaries of Journey to Un'Goro, and man, there are some good ones there. Some crazy stuff's about to happen. The meta is going to totally change. I have no idea what to expect. I don't know what's going to be good or what's going to be bad, but it sure is going to be exciting at the very least. So I'm not done with Un'Goro reviews just yet. I'm going to finish off the rest of the cards. There's still a ton to go. I'm going to crank them all out over the course of this weekend if you're watching this in real time. So stay tuned. There's a lot more cards to talk about, and still some pretty cool ones too. Even though I went through all the legendaries, there's good stuff on the way, so you don't want to miss that. But thanks again for watching. Share your thoughts, comments below. I love to hear what you guys have to say. Until then, and until next time, game on.